Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow on with my colleague from North Dakota, the notion that subpoenas are not sufficient to get information and that every ounce of evidence must be obtained by a search warrant has, of course, been repeatedly rejected by the Supreme Court over and over and over. And this hearing, the reason why, as Mr. Armstrong says, we are talking about January 6th is because, as I understand it, this hearing was initially spurred on by an FBI whistleblower who is not here testifying today. The one who ostensibly had the information about alleged wrongdoing is not here to stand in front of us, to testify under oath, to be questioned by members of both sides. Mr. Knight, I want to ask you a hypothetical. Let's say that there's a riot and an attack on our democracy on a particular day. We'll just call it January 6th for the purpose of this hypothetical. Let's say that the FBI has information that an individual was near the site of the riot that day. And let's say that the FBI had evidence that that individual purchased a firearm in the past 6 months. And let's say that the FBI had evidence that that same person planned to return 2 weeks later to interfere with another democratic process involving the President of the United States. Is it actually your testimony here today to say that it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment for the FBI to seek bank records for that individual?
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So, at least based upon the public information I have available, they did not know on an individualized basis that people were planning to return to cause violence. And I think that's a distinction that's worth noting.
That's fine. I agree with you. That's not in the hypothetical. They just knew they were going to return.
I believe you said something along the lines of evidence that they were coming back to
interfere. You're right. Let's just say that. Do you think the Fourth Amendment prohibits the FBI from getting bank records for that individual if they don't know that they are going to commit violence?
I think that's an easy warrant to get.
A warrant?
Yeah, I think that would be an easy warrant to get from a judge.
So you're now saying that you need to get a warrant for bank records?
I am saying you should have to get a warrant for bank records. The status quo is you do not.
You disagree with the Supreme Court, which has upheld the constitutionality of the Bank Secrecy Act.
So if you'd like to talk about the Supreme Court precedent in the Bank Secrecy Act, I think that Carpenter, which is a far more recent case, points to some very strong questions about the constitutionality of the Bank Secrecy Act. I've written something about it. I'm happy to send to your office.
I understand. And by the way, I agree. I mean, but Carpenter also demonstrates that the Supreme Court is evolving and is evolving on the Fourth Amendment, and there's no question, and I will tell you as a former prosecutor, if I had that predication, I would fire off a subpoena to that bank every single day, 10 out of 10 times.
Well, respectfully, sir, it doesn't seem like they even use subpoenas here.
I have to move on. I have to move on because I think it's absolutely absurd that we are sitting here trying to make an argument that somehow the Fourth Amendment is being violated when there is specific, reasonable suspicion about every individual whose bank records were obtained because they bought a gun, they were at the insurrection, and they were going to come back. The fact of the matter is, we are once again here on a completely sham rationale. There was no First Amendment or Fourth Amendment violation around January 6th. No. This is simply another effort to whitewash what happened on January 6th. One of the members of the committee calls those who were convicted of crimes hostages, while there are actual American hostages sitting in Gaza right now under captivity of a terrorist organization. And we're supposed to equate the people sitting in jail who rioted and attacked this Capitol, we're supposed to equate them with these hostages. Mr. Chairman, you continually say that it used to be that both parties agreed with the First Amendment. It didn't used to be. It is. It remains the case. We all agree with the First Amendment. But the problem is that the First Amendment is not absolute. It does not protect any single thing anyone says. And there are limits and that's important. And what this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media and otherwise out there, so that misinformation and disinformation can run rampant on Elon Musk's social platform and every other social platform, so that the Republicans, can benefit from it in November's election. That is why this committee exists.
The time of the gentleman.
And we have gotten no evidence to support any of these allegations.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina.
I yield to the chairman such time as he may consider.
I appreciate that. I think the gentleman from New York just said that we're trying to chill the federal government. I don't know if it's ever been said that way. It's always the government trying to chill Americans' rights and chill Americans. I've never seen anything.
It's called projection.
I've never seen anything like. But guess what? You know who was opposed to how the FBI and the Bank of America did this thing when they asked for this information? You know who was opposed to it? 3 FBI agents. The guys on the case. George Hill, Bonavolanta, Steve Jensen, all testified to the committee that it was wrong. And guess who else said it was wrong? Chris Wray said this: we recalled this information to avoid even the appearance of any kind of overreach. So even the FBI, who has systematically violated Americans, who's this FBI who said, if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. If you're a parent going to a school board meeting, you're a terrorist. Even the FBI said, this is ridiculous. And they pulled back. 3 agents testified. So, I mean, and somehow the government is the one who chills American speech when they pressure big tech to censor, when they ask banks to give them. That's chilling speech. And we've seen it first. Dr. Peterson's seen it in his own country, and now it's coming here. That's what we're concerned about. I yield back to the gentleman. Thank him for yielding. The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
Yield to Mr. Jordan.
I think the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Knight, do you need a gun registration list if government can just go ask the banks every time some customer purchases a gun?
Well, the banks won't know if you purchased a gun per se, but your bank records can be a pretty good, though not perfect, registration for almost anything.
But my point is, it's almost like a backdoor registration, right?
Yes. One of the challenges is that highly sensitive information can be accessed through financial records that otherwise is constitutionally protected.
Yeah. Dr. Peterson, do you think they're just going to stop with conservatives? I mean, my history tells us that the cancel culture mob, the surveillance state, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't just, they never are satisfied with just certain people. It always expands. And I'll give you an example. A few years ago, Senator Feinstein, iconic Democrat senator from the great state of California, the folks in San Francisco renamed the Dianne Feinstein Elementary School. They took her name off the school because they found that she said something like 40 years ago that the cancel culture mob didn't like. So even a liberal Democrat senator wasn't good enough for the mob. They came after her too. And this is the thing that scares me. We've invited probably more Democrat witnesses in front of this committee than any other committee, because we invite Democrats to come in and say, we respect the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, respect the Constitution. My concern is it never just stops with certain people. It always goes further. Do you agree with that?
Well, the reason I prefaced my remarks with an insistence on nonpartisanship is because the danger posed by this increasing ability of governments and large corporations to collude threatens everyone's freedom equally. And it could well be that at the moment, and this is, I think, the case the Republicans here are trying to make, is that the people who are in the sights of that collusion tend to have more conservative leanings, but that will shift in a moment whenever the political tides shift. And we're concentrating in this hearing a fair bit on the specific events of January 6th, a very partisan issue that produces a very intense partisan divide, but we're not addressing the fundamental issue here directly, which is that our new technology enables a mode of surveillance that's so intense and all-pervading that no one will escape its purview regardless of their political views.
No, I think that's exactly right. And there also seems to me, and I'll go to Mr. Tedesco, there seems to be a pattern emerging. I'm going to take you back to when we first kind of started getting into this issue with the somewhat famous now school board's memorandum from the Department of Justice. And I know you probably remember what I'm talking about here, Mr. Tedesco. But the opening sentence of the Attorney General's document, this memorandum, says, in recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, threats of violence against school administrators, board members, teachers, staff who participate in the vital work of running our nation's public schools. At the hearing where we had the Attorney General, I asked him a simple question. I said, you make that opening statement as the basis for why you need this memorandum to go after moms and dads showing up at school board meetings. What was that first sentence based on? And he told us it was based on the National School Boards Association, the memorandum they put out. And the same thing happened to you guys, because we had some entity here called the Global Disinformation Index puts out this information, and then the government uses that information as the basis to say you're some terrorist group. That is frightening, that our government, because FinCEN, the Treasury Department, used what some agency put out, or not agency, some entity put out as the basis to say you guys are some hate group or some terrorist group. Yep. I find that alarming, and particularly the pattern that it, I guess two doesn't make a pattern, but it sure makes you start to wonder. Your thoughts, Mr. Tedesco?
Sure. The FBI used the SPLC's report on radical traditional Catholics to target them as well in the interim between the Moms for Liberty and parental rights groups and what's going on today. I think it's very alarming that the government uses these obviously partisan and discredited third-party, arbiters of truth who really are just promoting their own political agenda and trying to do damage to their perceived political enemies to make decisions about anything, let alone sending them to financial institutions as part of some kind of financial surveillance scheme. Yeah.
Some left-wing group says you're bad. Oh, then the government's going to use that information to send out to banks and say, you might want to be concerned about this. You maybe want to debank these individuals. That is a frightening world. And the point is, I don't think it's going to be just limited to conservative people in the future. Because we've already seen examples. There were people in Black Lives Matter who got targeted during the summer of 2020 when all the protests were happening around the country. And I disagree with some of the things, a lot of the things that happened that summer, but I also don't like the fact that they're going after liberals either. That's a scary thing. And then there used to be an agreement in both parties that First Amendment activity should be protected. Second Amendment activity, your right to privacy should be protected. But unfortunately,
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light, ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how's it supposed to feel? How's it supposed to feel? How's it supposed to feel? They wanna say my name, but they holding back. They wanna say they hate, but they know it's cap. I ain't play no games, I just do that's fact. And I don't feel no shame, it's a mood you lack. I go crazy, nah bitch I ain't lazy. Track after track, I work on this shit daily. Pass me the jack, right as fuel, got me hazy. About to unpack all these things I've been chasing. I've got visions in my head, like memories after death. To be a legend instead of something you can forget. I'm living up every breath, I'd rather lead than be led. I'll fill the seats as I spread with every word that I've said.